Hi, good afternoon, everybody. As people are trickling in into our auditorium here, and I'm sure people are also trickling in on the Zoom, it is my pleasure to welcome everybody to Pediatric Grand Rounds. Dr. Rafi Hirsch couldn't be here today, so I will start us off with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. And we pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and future, who call this place that UCSF sits of the land that UCSF sits upon their home. And I say this almost every time. It can feel very sort of performative to do a land acknowledgement, like that's the thing that we do right now. But since one of the major goals of Pediatric Grand Rounds is to build community and to actually expand the wisdom of our community and learn and grow as a community, I always feel that it's meaningful to connect that to the place that we sit on and the large the rich history that this place has. With that, I think it's the second time in a row in a short period of time that I get to introduce Professor Kuo. And when I introduce her as Professor Kuo, she goes like, "You make me feel uncomfortable." But I'm like, we introduce. I'm sorry, I'm in a very feminist mood today, but we introduced all of the guys as professor this, that, and the other. And you are a professor. So Professor Kuo, who is, and I always mess up your title, but you're the Director of Child Health, Equity, and Community within the Department of Pediatrics, and has done nothing but amazing work, really advancing equity in child health, not just here at UCSF, but across the entire state of California and nationally. And by founding the Pediatric Leadership and Advocacy Program, which is our plus program in the residency, I now know people all over the country and internationally who are advancing health equity, and it's all because of Professor Kuo. And so she is going to introduce our speaker for today.
Right. So, yeah, if anyone attended the Grand Rounds, I think, was it 2 weeks or a week? Oh my gosh, I don't know, time, 2 weeks ago. And you can see the recording. I was so thrilled to have members of our different councils that are part of the Center for Child and Community Health that really center lived experience from adults and caregivers to young adults. And so we mentioned during that one of our ACEs Aware, that many of our ACEs Aware councils are helping to co-develop resources and providing input to the ACEs Aware initiative. And so today, building off that, because you might have heard us mention Stress Busters, which is an incredible tool that we will learn about today. We have three guests. One is Dr. Gilgoff, who's an advisor to the California ACEs Aware Initiative and the UCLA UCSF ACEs Aware Family Resilience Network, or UCAN, and Office of the California Surgeon General. She's, as I said, a pediatrician, and over the course of her career, she has been the medical director of the Clinical Innovations and Research Team within the Center for Youth Wellness and the co-founder of the National Committee on Asthma and Toxic Stress. There's a multitude of other things that she has been a leader on. I'm going to skip to the one that you'll hear about today. She co-created the Stress Busters Clinical Strategies for Preventing and Mitigating Toxic Stress. It's a free online course to help clinicians develop their clinical response to childhood adversity and toxic stress. And she also helped develop the ACEs Aware Stress Busters resource webpage, which is available also to everybody to look at their tools and resources to prevent and heal toxic stress for all of us. I also have Jada Amani Carter in the middle here, who's one of our incredible patient advisors on our ACEs Aware project. And she grew up in rural Midwest and moved to the Bay Area at around age 12 and began arts, culture, and community organizing at the age 15. She now lives in Oakland and works in environmental justice and social activism, and is a leader and facilitator, including facilitating our ACEs Aware Youth and Young Adult Council. She also serves as the hip hop and climate justice creative organizing coordinator at Youth versus Apocalypse, community organizing lead at Hype Youth Drop-In Center, and board member at Better Alternatives for Youth Peace. And lastly, but not least, is Satare Parsamizade Tarani, who's a program coordinator at UCAN and UCSF Center for Child and Community Health. Prior to working as a program coordinator with UCAN, Satare served as an ACEs Aware Young Adult Patient Advisor, and we are really thrilled to have her join our team as a project coordinator. She's been incredible. She's currently with the Live Beyond campaign, serving as an advisor to that Office of the Surgeon General campaign. And she immigrated to the US when she was 15 years old and has been a youth mental health advocate since 2018. She's incredibly passionate about the intersection of ACEs and mental health, and I will now turn it over to you all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kuo, for that warm welcome. Thank you again for joining us for today's Ground Rounds. Today's talk will be on stress busters, evidence-based strategies for mitigating the toxic stress response in standard clinical practice. And we are with the UCLA UCSF ACEs Aware Family Resilience Network, otherwise known as UCAN. And basically, UCAN implements the ACEs Aware initiative on behalf of the California Department of Healthcare Services and the Office of the California Surgeon General. I'll skip over because of the warm welcome, but we're so glad to be here with all of you. Today's learning objectives are to identify and be able to apply evidence-based stress mitigation strategies in one's own life and for family members or patients, to explain simple ways to incorporate trauma-informed approaches related to supportive relationships, sleep, nutrition, physical activity, mindfulness, nature, and mental health into your standard clinical practice. And lastly, to identify examples of community-based support services for stress mitigation strategies. We wanted to start today's talk with a mindful moment. Often it's very hard for us to find time during our busy life to kind of turn inward and think about how we are doing. So we wanted to take a moment to do that together today. So let's all kind of start by taking a deep, full breath in and a long, slow exhale. Allowing your eyes to gently close or having a soft gaze. Another nice, big breath in and a long, slow exhale so that you can begin to feel your body release. One more deep, long inhale. And on the exhale, allowing yourself to fully arrive into your body, into this moment, and into the breath you're taking. Now letting go of any control of the breath and simply allowing yourself to be here. Letting be all the effort it has taken to bring you here now. Letting be all the thoughts, pressures of what is yet to come, and giving yourself the gift of this moment, this time together with your colleagues. As you are ready, taking a moment to turn inward and notice and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? How am I holding my day so far in my body? Labeling it for yourself in 1 or 2 words. What is here for you now? Whether it's tension, excitement, anxiety, readiness, whatever it may be, simply notice it. And with an attitude of curiosity and kindness, let it go. Now taking a fuller, deeper breath and focusing back together and opening our eyes whenever we're ready. Thank you. And I'll pass it to Dr. Gilgoff.
Thank you so much, Satari, for that. That was very, very helpful. And thank you to all of you for being here today. And so what I'm going to talk about is stress and what we can do about it. How many of you, just by show of hands, have heard about adverse childhood experiences, toxic stress, how stress impacts our health and wellness, right? We hear about it all the time. And what's always inspired me is, now what? What can I do about it? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And really thinking about that patient who maybe has uncontrolled asthma or diabetes, and we think toxic stress may be a component of that. What can we do? When we see a kiddo with mental health issues or behavioral health issues, or they're struggling with relationships, or maybe their grades are failing, when we start seeing that there's neurologic, endocrine, metabolic, immune, genetic regulatory issues,
maybe there's some toxic stress physiology and we can do something about it. And we know this, right? We know biology, we know physiology. So pediatric clinicians, we are primed to be a really integral part of that multidisciplinary approach to ACEs and toxic stress. So that's what my talk is going to be about. And I get pretty excited about this stuff. So I hope you guys join me in that excitement. For me, using stress biology is a really helpful lens because then I can start thinking about both parts of this equation. I can think about what are the stressors? What's happening in my patient's environment that may be contributing to their health and wellness, and how might I help lower that stressor burden through connection and resources? And how can I think about their internal physiology? What's happening on the inside when they're faced with something stressful? How can I help them lower their stress hormones, balance their stress response system in the moment? And what are long-term healing strategies that can help them recover and get into that post-traumatic growth phase? So I'm going to break all this down. That's what my part of the talk is going to be about today. So when we're thinking about the stressors, first and foremost, safety. Are they safe? Are there resources that they may need around intimate partner violence? Am I worried about child abuse or neglect? And how can I get them support? Thinking about social drivers of health, if there's food insecurity, housing insecurity, these are all the things that you guys at UCSF, you guys are already doing this. You guys are leading this great work in community. I can help that patient, that family anticipate, think about the future. If we know, for example, that a child is really sensitive to noise and noise is a stressor, then we can partner with schools and caregivers around maybe noise canceling headphones or quiet spaces or helping them with those transitions. And then we don't have to do this alone. There are so many great resources out there, and you'll hear us talk a couple times about acesaware.org/manage stress, because we have handouts for patients. You guys can use those handouts as scripts if it's helpful. And then there's lots of resources. So if nothing else, you can just show them the webpage. I do that in clinic quite a bit. I just pull up the sleep webpage and I kind of walk through things. There's findhelp.org, there's your local 211, and then you guys, again, are pioneers in building networks of care and really thinking about that multidisciplinary approach. We can also start to think about how our organizations, our clinics, our systems are built so that we are those safe environments. Our clinics, our organizations aren't re-traumatizing. We're actually lowering the stressor burden. People feel relaxed and safe and welcome when they come to our center, to our clinic, to our office. And so the trauma-informed care principles are a really lovely way to think about how to do that, how to set up my clinic so that I can be a protective factor for my patients and families. So we can think about both emotional and physical safety. We can think about building trust. We can think about how we recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma so that we can be compassionate and empathetic and help build that self-compassion in our families and caregivers. We can think about patient-centered and evidence-based care always. Ensure that collaboration. So we're thinking about active listening and motivational interviewing, discussing mutually agreed upon goals. What do you want to work on today? We can always provide care that's sensitive to the patient's racial, cultural background and gender identity. And so trauma-informed care is really taking us from that what's wrong with you approach, right? Why aren't you taking the medications? Why aren't you caring about your health? To what happened to you? How is that addiction actually helping you cope? Let's talk about how it helps you. Let's talk about, oh, maybe you actually are taking the medications, but your receptors are downregulated, so you're not responding to the medications appropriately. Let's really think about the physiology and what happened to you. We also can start lifting up that strengths-based approach. What's right with you? Oh my gosh, you're here today. Thank you for coming. You had to go through so many struggles to get here. You're doing an amazing job. You've survived. And we can be really integral again in that what's healing for you. What can I do to support your healing and helping you get better? Or whatever that means for you, right? So now a stressor happened and the stress response is activated. So we actually now have that adrenaline or that cortisol and that stress response is happening. What can we do to support children and families in how to help them balance those stress hormones in the moment? And the window of tolerance is a really lovely way to talk to kids and families about what's happening for them in the moment. And so if you look at the picture, that light blue area, that's that window of tolerance, that zone of regulation where something happens. We might feel angry, we might feel upset, sad, but we can ride the waves. We have coping strategies, we have a support system, we feel safe. And so we can manage. All of us, no matter who we are, every single person on this planet can sometimes get kicked out of that window of tolerance. We all know it. We can sometimes go to that hyper aroused state. We might go into that kicking, yelling, screaming. We might feel like we need to fight or flee. We might want to shoot off that really angry email to our boss. We might also sometimes get kicked into that hypo aroused state, shut down, numb, just want to freeze, curl up in a ball. Physiologically, we might even faint in this type of space. So what can we do when we've been kicked out of our window of tolerance? And these things on the right, I'm going to go through them, are things we can do. And one thing to think about is if we've experienced a lot of ACEs or trauma or stressors, our window of tolerance might be small. And that's adaptive. That's really great if you need to be quickly in that hyper aroused state. It's a very beautiful adaptive system that helps you survive. And it can be complicated then when you go to school and you're supposed to sit still in class, right? So every time you practice these techniques, you're actually neuroplastically rewiring your brain and you're widening your window of tolerance. So we're kind of doing both and. We're helping with that immediate stress response. And over time, we're neuroplastically thinking about long-term healing. So we can do a couple of these because I don't know about you guys, but the one that Sataria did was really helpful for me too. So let's just start with some grounding techniques. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your back against the chair. Just really notice how gravity is pulling you and supporting you. The earth is supporting you. You can think about 5 things you see right now. Just scan the room to bring you back into this space. What are 4 things you hear? What are 3 things you might smell? 2 things you might feel. Let yourself explore a little bit, maybe even your own body, your hands, your arms. What's 1 thing you might taste? Leftover from breakfast, tea, coffee. So this is, if you see somebody who's in a hyper aroused state, these are techniques that you can use to just bring them back to the space to help lower their stress hormones in the moment. You can pick your favorite breathing technique and teach it to anybody. My personal favorite is diaphragmatic belly breathing. Kids love it. And it's just really feeling both your belly and your chest rise when you take that big, deep in-breath. Sensory support, get a glass of water, music. For some people, they need a hand on their shoulder. Other people, if their intimacy barrier is different, they might need you actually to step back a little bit to feel safe. You can use progressive muscle relaxation. So that's where you tense up different parts of your muscle groups and really start to have that sense of interoception. Because often we're not feeling into our body, and that's a way to start getting in back to feeling your body, noticing where you're tense and noticing what it feels to be not tense. We can move our body, just shake it off. We can reach out to our support people. So there's all these really amazing ways to help people if they're in that hyper aroused state. I love all of Dr. Bruce Perry's work. If you haven't ever watched any of his lectures, I highly recommend Googling him. He is a neuroscientist and psychiatrist, and he gives us regulate, relate, reason, which also is really helpful just for a mind memory trick when I see somebody who's, again, in that hyper aroused state, because the nerd in me loves the neuroscience part of it. Every communication is neurobiologically going in through our cranial nerves to our lower brain first. So right now, your lower brain is saying, am I safe? Because if the fire alarm goes off, you're not listening to me anymore, right? Safety first. And do I feel safe to you? You're noticing the way my facial expressions are, my hand movements, the tone of my voice. Then it moves up to the limbic system, the emotional system, and that's the relate, that's the connection. So do I feel understood? Does she get me? And so and then only then does it get to the thinking brain. And so often we go to the thinking brain first, right? We say, no, you can't have a cookie because it's going to be dinner. The thinking brain's offline if the kiddo's having a temper tantrum, right? So this works for all of us at any age. And so we can really think about regulate. Maybe they need to be moved to a safe space. Maybe it's about our tone of voice. Maybe it's about getting down on their level. Maybe it's about not having direct eye contact because that can be really stressful. So I'm safe. I'm here with you. Then we're moving up to connection and relate. I really want to understand all my active listening skills. Did I get that right? You seem frustrated. Tell me more. And only then can you get to problem solving. And so this is a plug for Dr. Ross Greene's Lives in the Balance, collaborative problem solving, and really thinking about a frame shift here. So when we see behavior, we're thinking that behavior is communication and is probably telling us that it's a stress response. They're in survival mode. They're not in their thinking brain. Kids want to do well. We all want to do well. And so if we're not doing well, we probably neurobiologically can't do what we're being expected to do. And so how do we collaboratively problem solve with kids? So it may be that they need some of those coping strategies and self-regulation skills. It may be that they have some underlying skill that they're struggling with. And we often guess what they need, but we sometimes guess wrong. And then it doesn't work, right? And so this is really about collaboratively problem solving with them and recognizing, again, when they're zoning out, kicking, screaming, yelling, they're not being manipulative. They're not being lazy. They're not just being, rude or obstinate. They're in survival mode. So we can help them with that. This slide is a reminder for me to just talk about how we're not expecting people to be connected all the time. This isn't about everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns all the time. And if it's not, we're doing something wrong. This is about, thinking about mismatch and repair and how we actually build connection and resilience. And so Dr. Ed Tronick looked at good enough parents, what they called good enough parents, and they found that they were only attuned, matched with their kiddos on the same page 30% of the time. And they took it a step further, which was really beautiful. And what they found was in that 70% of mismatch was those opportunities for repair, connection, and resilience. Because we think about it, when have we made those true connections with other people? It's when we're down in the mess and there was somebody with us down there and we knew they had our back. That's when you build the connection. And how do you build resilience? It's bouncing forward after a challenge. You have to have a challenge to build resilience, right? So these are the beautiful, messy spaces where we can apologize, we can model, we can repair, and we can really build connection and resilience. So now we're moving into that long-term healing. And I love using the stress busters as a framework because it gives us things we can do again in our clinical practice starting today. And we know that these 7 stress busters, supportive relationships, sleep, nutrition, physical activity, mindfulness, nature, mental health, they actually improve neurologic, metabolic, endocrine, immune, genetic regulatory function. So this is us, right? This is part of that multidisciplinary approach, and we can all do it. And I hope what you're getting from my talk so far and what you'll continue to get is that we can do this, that we're already doing it, and we're just putting a trauma-informed lens onto the great work that we're already doing. So I'm going to take each of the stress busters and just walk you through them. And starting with my personal passion, supportive relationships. And just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land, the green is those universal education, what we can do for everybody. Yellow is for patients, families that might need a little extra support. And red is for those who might need a lot more support. And so probably referrals to subspecialty type services is generally what I'm thinking. So a tiered approach for you guys. So supportive relationships, I think it's really helpful first just around psychoeducation, that we live healthier and longer with close relationships and that wide variety of social support. And Dr. Julianne Holt-Lunstad, she's done this. She did a meta-analysis about social support, and she compared it to other meta-analyses. And what she found was that social support was more important to our long-term survival than our BMI, how much alcohol we drink, right? I saw some eyebrows, right? How much alcohol we drink. And what was the other one? Oh, I got so excited about the eyebrow raise. Weight, alcohol, and physical activity. Yes. And it was just as important as how much we smoke. I mean, let that sink in, because how much do we ask about all those other things? We know how important they are to our health. And how often, when we reflect, do we ask our patients about their social relationships? And do they feel connected? And do they have somebody to talk to when they're struggling? And do they have a wide support network? So that's thing number one that we can do today, right? Just start talking to patients about this stuff. We think about literacy programs like Talk, Read, Sing, and Reach Out and Read as helping with literacy, but they're actually really great social support systems. So they're inspiring connection, right? Every time that caregiver reads to the kiddo. We can encourage time in, even more than time outs, right? Just put the phone down, close the computer, and really actively engage. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to talk about is what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes. And when we do that, we're not just improving the relationship, we're improving our physiology, our health and well-being. There's tons of really great resources out there, group clinic models. You guys are doing a lot of that great work here. For people who need a little more support, who are struggling with relationships, we can connect them with community programs, faith-based programs, support groups. For caregivers who want to know a little bit more, we can connect them to parenting programs. And then recognize in that red zone. So if we've experienced adverse childhood experiences, there's a good chance there was a relational trauma in that, right? The ACEs, a lot of them were in the context of a caregiving relationship. And that's going to affect how you feel trust in relationships. It's going to affect your attachment. And so you might need therapy, like individual counseling, couples counseling, family therapy, to really help heal those attachment wounds. And we can heal those attachment wounds at any age. Your attachment level is not fixed. You can have a secure relationship, whoever you are, wherever you are on your path. Child-parent psychotherapy, developed here by Dr. Alicia Lieberman, is really a beautiful dyadic therapy for caregivers and children. So again, you guys are leading the way, so thank you. Balanced nutrition. It's fascinating, right? That stress biology, if you're in that sympathetic nervous system phase, it's actually going to tell you to not be hungry. And you're not going to want to eat because you want to conserve the energy and save that energy for your muscles. You don't want to waste it on digestion. It's going to, if you're in that cortisol phase, it's 15 minutes to hours later, it's actually saying, okay, the threat should be over. It's not necessarily true in our current modern society, but it's designed to say, stock up for the next threat. So eat high fat, high energy, high calorie food, so you have the energy for the next time. So when we know this stress biology, right there and then we can be trauma informed. We can take away the shame and the blame, right? When we want the ice cream and the potato chips, that's stress biology. And so then we can work with that stress biology, and we can pull in things like behavior change theory and habit change science. And we can do things like, well, let's have healthy, high fat, high energy food that's really easy access, like nuts and fruit. And let's put the ice cream and the potato chips a little bit higher up. So then you have that mindful moment to go, ooh, nope, this is stress. I'm going to have the nuts and the banana instead. For people, when we think about stress biology too, we're thinking it can lead to inflammation. So if we know that, then we can talk about anti-inflammatory nutrition for everybody. And one of the really big ones is processed foods, right? So that's a really nice one to talk to all our families about, because if you read an ingredient label and you don't recognize one of the ingredients, there's a good chance our immune system doesn't either, right? And so it's going to cause inflammation. For people who are struggling, who we think there is already inflammation present, then we might want to think about high dose omega-3s or curcumin, right? Those anti-inflammatory supplements. We can tie into other domains, bring in those supportive relationships, eat dinner, in a healthy way with your family, if your family is de-stressing, or in community if you need more support. And then we might want to refer to specialists, GI specialists, anorexia, bulimia if they need that, right? Other support services if they're in that red zone. Physical activity is interesting because it actually increases adrenaline, your sympathetic nervous system, and cortisol when you exercise. So how is it helpful for stress, right? Well, there's two probable reasons, two theories. One is that you're practicing a positive stress response, assuming you're not overdoing it, assuming you're still staying in your thinking brain. Every time you exercise, you're essentially practicing positive stress. You're overcoming a challenge and showing your body that it can do it. You're also metabolizing stress energy. So again, our system is designed for fight and flee, to run away from the tiger. But what if you have to sit still in class or on yet another Zoom call, right? So getting up and moving our body helps metabolize that stress energy. If you watch animals after really stressful, so the deer or the bunny rabbit that escaped, they will, after the stress is over, they'll shake. So they're releasing that stress energy, and we can do that too. We can think about activities that combine physical activity with self-regulation. So breathing techniques, martial arts, and yoga, they combine all those beautiful things all together. And then recognizing for that red zone that it's really hard to do these things, physical activity, any of the stress busters, when we need it most, right? So really helping partner with people about getting over those barriers. And for physical activity, a lot of that could be around, again, engaging support systems. If there's ways to get them connected to community groups, support services, professional trainers, bringing in exercise into our clinic space. Mindfulness. I'm checking the time. I think we're still good. Mindfulness, it's really important to think about trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive mindfulness. It can be really hard to close your eyes if you've experienced a lot of stress or stressors or currently stressed out. It can be really hard to feel safe in whatever environment you're in or trust the person who's leading the mindfulness. It can be hard to quiet those worried thoughts if you're having flashbacks or ruminations or images that are just stuck in your head. If your adrenaline and sympathetic nervous system is just on overdrive, it's hard to sit still and try and ignore those active hormones in your body. And so we can be really mindful when we're working with people around mindfulness and give them options and give them different ways. So one would be, just taking it slow, starting 1 minute at a time and working your way up. So you're practicing over time. Or maybe they need a different kind of mindfulness, like do mindful walking or grounding, like bringing more into their space. And it can be hard if they're numb and they're not used to feeling their body. So really thinking about maybe more physical or touch or massage type of mindfulness. So we can be really mindful about what the patient needs. And you don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of free resources out there. Again, there's links on acesaware.org/manage stress. I'm starting to sound like an advertisement. But there's, again, free online apps, UCLA Mindfulness, there's Insight Timer. The US Veterans Affairs Office has a lot of really great material. And then there are structured mindfulness programs if people need that. So there's mindfulness-based stress reduction, an 8-week course. You go once a week and then you have homework. And there's also mindfulness-based therapies. So mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, if that's something that interests people. Experiencing nature. So nature can come in a lot of different forms. So it could be a green space, a park, a playground. It can also be indoor plants. It can also be images of nature put on our clinic walls. The Children's Hospital has some really great, huge nature images. And you guys have Dr. Nushin Razani here. So you guys know this and have access to one of the premier nature and health people in the maybe world. If you want help on how to do this, there's parksrx.org. They have a whole toolkit that you can find online. Children in Nature Network, they have a lot of material that's specifically about ACEs and toxic stress and nature. We can help people with bus routes to, local safe spaces. And then, of course, I'm so glad we did the land acknowledgement because we really want to recognize that different people have different experiences in nature and different connections to the earth. And we have to recognize that there's been a lot of longstanding environmental racism, redlining, a lot of atrocities have happened in nature. So not everyone feels welcome. And so social justice and advocating for safe, welcoming nature spaces is a huge part of trauma-informed care and the Stress Busters work. For people who do really get engaged in nature, there's ecotherapy. So there are therapists that actually specialize in nature-based therapy. Gardening therapy is a thing. There's animal-assisted therapy. So you guys, I think, have a dog here. There's equine therapy, so horse therapy. There's really great adventure-based programs. So Gateway Mountain Center, they actually accept Medi-Cal and Medicaid for youth who are struggling. So they're doing mental health outdoors. So really a beautiful stuff is happening around us. Quality sleep. So just to know that sleep disturbances are probably the most or one of the most common sequelae after trauma and stress. And so people might need more than our routine sleep hygiene. And using stress biology, again, is such a great frame for this for me, because then I can start, again, thinking, are there stressors that are keeping people awake? Because if someone can't sleep because mom and dad are fighting down the hall, then really the focus needs to be on supporting the healing of that mom and dad or the caregivers and helping treat their toxic stress so that they can then create a safe environment for their kid. If the kiddo is struggling with sleep because it's worries that are keeping them up, then we can think about things like journaling or to-do lists, or if they're too young for that, they can give their worries to Guatemalan worry dolls and tuck them under their pillow. There's a box meditation, so where the caregiver could actually help them put the worries in a box in their mind. If we're thinking that their adrenaline and sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive, we can really think about ways to help calm that stress response. So really thinking about breathing techniques and mindfulness and reading right before a bed or a nice warm bath. Maybe they need physical safety. So maybe they need a nightlight, or maybe they need a weighted blanket, or maybe they want to walk around with you to see that you're locking all the doors. And then for some kids, maybe we really do need to think about co-sleeping or sitting by their bed until they fall asleep for that period of time where their stress response is really activated. Some people might need medication. So melatonin, prazosin is really helpful for nightmare-related, PTSD-related nightmares. Some kiddos are going to need sleep studies, referrals to sleep specialists. And then there are cognitive behavioral therapies specifically for insomnia. There's a whole specific protocol for that, so you can get people connected to that. And then mental and behavioral health care. So we can talk. Actually, and I should say, you guys are doing this already, because primary care, I think the statistic is you cover 70% of all mental health treatment in the United States, because it's so hard to get access to mental health care. So you guys are already doing this. And we can incorporate, again, the stress busters, gratitude, fun time, activities that provide meaning and purpose when we're talking to our families. And we can address those barriers. You guys are doing this. You guys have the amazing California MAP program, the access to psychiatric support, a phone call away. And you guys are doing integrated behavioral health care, engaging promotoras, peer support networks. So you guys are doing all this great work. And then, of course, you can incorporate things like the window of tolerance, the 3 R's, Bruce Perry's 3 R's. And one plug for mental health is just to know that mental health providers have specialties too. So when you're making those referrals, try to see if you can find a therapist that actually has expertise and certification in trauma therapies, and we can share with you different types of trauma therapies if that's helpful. And some people need medications, but always pairing those medications with the psychosocial support and not thinking about polypharmacy, avoiding that. And this is my last slide. I just want to say, I talked a lot about adrenaline and cortisol, but stress biology is way more complicated than that. And it affects all of these systems. And we just published this paper, Stress Phenotyping Framework. And what we're really trying to help figure out is what works for whom and in what order. Because I mean, I just told you guys what maybe like 50, 60 things we could do. And right now there's sort of a what I call splatter plot approach for these types of things. We just throw a whole bunch of stuff at people and then see what sticks. And part of that can work, motivational interviewing, trying to talk it through with families. But can we do a better job of figuring out what's biologically happening for you, for the patient in front of me, for my kids? And can I help guide you into what kind of treatment might be the most effective for you? Right. And we kind of started doing that a little bit in this talk. Because if, for example, I know a parent and child are struggling with attachment issues, then I might think child parent psychotherapy would be a first line. So really just trying to think that through. And that's the research that I'm doing now, and happy to talk more about that always. And just thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you guys are doing to help support children and families. And I'm super excited to pass it to my colleagues who are going to talk about how lived experience and community voice has been infused in all that we're doing Stress Busters and how we can continue to do that work. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Grigloff. So we wanted to transition and talk about how community input and lived experience has been shaped this work. So at first, I wanted to define what we mean by lived experience. Lived experience refers to the knowledge, insights, and understanding gained from personally encountering and navigating various life events or circumstances in the past. It also encompasses the unique perspectives and reflections of individuals based on their historical experiences. At ACEs Aware, we've been engaging with community and lived experience, and we have 4 statewide councils. Again, we did a ground rounds on September 5th. It was part of the pediatric ground rounds on the UCSF Center for Child and Community Health councils that went into more details, and the recording is available. So if anyone is interested, please watch that on YouTube. But one of the 2 groups that we have is the patient advisors, who are a group of patient consultants with Medi-Cal. The second group that we have is a group of community partners. So the Community Partner Council are California-wide community-based organization leaders who have community members affected by ACEs or predominantly have Medi-Cal. We also have 2 other groups. We have the ACEs Aware Youth and Young Adult Council and Young Adult Patient Advisors. They are a group of youth and young adults, and you can see a picture of them on the slide. They are, very diverse, not only in terms of race and ethnicity, but also in terms of sexual orientation, gender identities, and the geographical location that they represent across the state. And these 2 groups have been working very closely on the Live Beyond campaign, and I'll actually pass it to Jada to talk about that.
Thanks, Atari. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. Cool. So, yes, Live Beyond campaign, as Atari mentioned, the Youth and Young Adult Council was a part of this first ever youth-centered campaign about ACEs. And it's not only for youth, but it's also by youth. And the Office of the Surgeon General contracted Civilian to help put together the campaign alongside us. So we were able to co-create it together. And I'm happy to report actually that it reached a lot of people in California. Actually, 326 million people were reached across different platforms statewide, in addition to around 700,000 organic social media, like folks were reached organically on social media. And like I said, we collaborated to create the campaign. Even the name Live Beyond was something that we brainstormed together. We talked a lot about what the implications of different names would be. We talked about what color blue we wanted, because the first color blue seemed a little bit too clinical, although it is about health. We wanted to, give it a different kind of vibe, something more relatable, something approachable, something warm and welcoming, including it goes down to the font that we use. also the symbols and the impact that we want, and also the bigger picture of getting some data about before and after. How does awareness, especially as it comes, like as it pertains to young people, how can awareness grow as a result of this campaign? So there was some surveying and data collected before the campaign to see what is the level of awareness of ACEs among young people, youth, and young adults currently. And then we will have some data after the campaign to see how it's changed. And it's been really, really cool to also anticipate the conversations that young people might bring to folks like you, healthcare practitioners. What are they going to ask you? How do you prepare to talk with young people about that, and start to anticipate helpful ways to approach those conversations with young people as they are discovering ACEs and this concept and how they may personally be impacted by it. So yeah, we actually have a webinar on September 26th about that. So, oh yeah, by the way, this is what it looks like on laptop. This is what it looks like on your phone. It's made to be very interactive. It's made to serve multiple purposes, to educate, but also to engage people in their own healing journeys. Yeah. So there's also stories, because humans we're very narrative based species. Stories are one of the most effective ways that we can communicate with each other and learn. So these stories come directly from folks like us. Some of our stories are in here, and other folks on the Youth and Young Adult Council, so you can learn through and alongside everyone, and maybe young folks can see themselves reflected in these stories as well. Yeah. And so we definitely encourage you to connect with the campaign and share it with everyone, especially youth and young adults in your life. I also brought a few things from our campaigns. We have stickers in the back, we have healing journals and info sheets. So feel free to grab all of them, because that means I have less to carry back home. And also, yeah, there are videos of youth talking about ACEs and their healing, and a lot more. Sorry. Cool. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to Satari. Thank you.
Yes, as Jada was mentioning, yes, giving it was wonderful. As Jada was mentioning, if you go to the story section, you'll see how the youth advisor are talking about stress busters and how they incorporate the stress busters in their daily lives, because the stress busters can look differently for different individuals. So as Dr. Gilgoff was mentioning throughout the presentation, we definitely recommend you checking out acesaware.org/manage stress. We have many great resources on that website, including patient-facing handouts on each of the stress busters. And these handouts were actually reviewed by the patient advisors before they were published on this website to ensure that they were culturally sensitive and youth-friendly. For example, a lot of our patient advisors brought up great points about the balanced nutrition section in terms of food insecurity, food deserts. So definitely the cultural aspect has been incorporated on these handouts. And a lot of our patient advisors and community partners also mentioned that they would need these handouts to be available in Spanish. And we are glad to announce that they are available in Spanish. So this is something that you can print out and give to your patients, or you can refer them to the PDFs where they can access them online. Another exciting thing that's on the website is that there is a 5-hour online training for providers about stress busters. And if you take that training and complete it, it offers 5 CME credits. And another exciting project that we've been working on with the community partners group is that they've been very like from the very beginning restructuring a clinical toolkit that was intended for providers for use for community-based organizations. And we've been working on that for the past several months with the patient advisors and the community partners. And they've just made great suggestions on how this toolkit can better serve the community that they serve. And for example, they let us know that we really need to have a case study on homelessness. So we've listened to them, and we are working with both groups to create a case study on how community-based organizations can approach individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And the toolkit, they also made great suggestions in terms of the language, the terminology that is being used. And the CBO Stress Buster Toolkit is a work in progress, but we are hoping to publish that in the coming months. Definitely check out our website again, acesaware.org. We have webinars. They all offer CME credits. We are also across multiple social media channels. And there's a way for you to sign up for our monthly newsletter. If you scan the QR code on that newsletter, you'll be informed about our upcoming webinars. We also include like recent publications on ACEs and stress biology. And I'll pass it back to Jada to finish us off.
Awesome, thank you. So as you may have noticed, the theme throughout this presentation is we like things to be interactive. We want to actually practice what we are talking about, whether it be the mindful moment at the beginning, or there was something else that we did. Yeah, the grounding. So now this is our final, interactive bit, which is to make a SMART goal around how all of us are going to apply stress busters to our life. It could be in the coming week or month or rest of the year, however you want to go about it. So the first one is, let's get specific about which stress buster. So we have mental health care, we have experiencing nature, we have exercise, we have balanced nutrition. Is supportive relationships one of them? Yes. What else did I miss? Mindfulness. See, this is a good quiz moment too. There we go. Quality sleep. Yeah, and I started with mental health care. Cool. So choose whichever one resonates with you most in this moment. And then to make it measurable, you can say, for example, okay, 5 minutes a day, I'll have a mindful moment. Or, if you want to measure it by months, every week or every month for 6 months, I'm going to go hiking, for example, and make it achievable. No, you got to know yourself, your capacity. Everybody in here, I'm sure it works so much. Y'all got so much on your plate. So working with that, not making it burdensome. And yeah, time bound, we kind of talked about that in the specific bit. So I encourage you to think about that, seal it. And thank you all so much for attending this presentation.
Yes, we have time for a couple of questions. So thank you very much for a great presentation.
So this look like really fantastic resources. I'm wondering, has there been an effort to hook it into AFAX as dot phrases so that we can easily import it into our after visit summaries or handouts?
Do you guys want me to use the microphone? I think you asked a really great implementation question, and that is there a way, or are they already dot phrases in, Epic and that kind of thing? I will say we have a whole implementation guide around ACE screening more broadly and ACE implementation, and that is also on the acesaware.org site. I am not sure if we have stress buster specific dot phrases, but I would love to work on that with somebody if you're volunteering. Reach out.
Like maybe a Q1 question.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be amazing. Please, 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 please. Yes.
These are all like, oh, we're doing They're like, I should have come to Grand Rounds.
Well, for what it's worth, a dot phrase, I would be happy to share all my notes from this talk. And then the ACEs Aware website has the resource page, but also the handout. So you really could just kind of, copy paste and do it pretty quickly.
There's a question from the webinar. Meredith Russell, one of our phenomenal nurse practitioners, she asked, This seems like it should be the foundation of all healthcare clinics. How do providers integrate this ACEs screening and intervention during a busy clinic with back-to-back patients? And how do we bill for this?
Those are such good questions. So again, ACEs Aware has a whole implementation guide, and they have technical assistance as well. So you can always reach out. Plus, you guys are, I mean, we're part of UCSF, so we could easily connect with anybody. ACE screening is already happening at Children's Oakland, and so I think they're trying to incorporate it more here. Billing information is also on the website because you do get reimbursed for screening. And so there are billing codes that go with that. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of really broad work around the state that's linking the ACEs Aware Initiative and the work there with things like the CYBHI, Child Youth Behavioral Health Initiative, and it's helping kids get access to care. So once they have that toxic stress diagnosis code, it actually opens the door to a whole bunch of other resources. So then they qualify. So there's a lot of really great work. And so if you have any more specific questions, I encourage going to the website, but also just reaching out because we have technical assistance. You can email me directly or there's a contact us information there.
In addition to my role here, I have a side. So struck by how limited we are in this nutrition access. So grateful for this talk. I'm sure all my colleagues there, but come to my things that I'm not thinking of.
There's so many things. I would, you and I could connect, but I think two things to just think about right away is pretty soon we're putting out this community-based organization toolkit, and we will have a whole section for each stress buster about what organizations can do to bring stress busters into the work. So that it's not just about personal responsibility, like now you individual, you have to think about physical activity and you have to get more stressed that you're not enough physically active, right? It's about how could you bring plants or even just images of plants into the juvenile justice center? How could you talk to the organization about, can you get them outside? Can you partner with a group like Gateway Mountain Center that actually does mental health therapy out in nature, and it's again reimbursed by Medi-Cal? So can you partner with different organizations to get people outside? Can you have classes about healthy relationships and think about group models of therapy, because right there you're engaging the social support networks and you're helping people feel connected and part of peer support. Engaging in meaning and purpose, so giving them opportunities to think about what's meaningful for them. There's tons of ways to bring this in from an organizational standpoint, and that is a lot of the work that we're all doing together, and working with community-based organizations to say what's realistic, what's their funding for, that kind of thing. But I'm happy to talk to you more about that. I used to work at Juvenile Justice Center way back in the day. Yeah.
Right, well, for people in the live audience, there are some flyers and stickers and things like that in the back here, and if you came in early, lunch is down here too. Please join me in thanking.
Thank you. There is that course. If anybody wants to learn more, there's that 5-hour course, and you don't have to take the whole 5 hours. There's you can pick and choose. So thank you guys.
Thanks.